What's going on YouTube? This is Joey Boy, and today I've got something a little different for you guys. This is an idea for a video I've been thinking about for a little while. A few of you have left comments on different videos asking me if I could go over very common team archetypes that you may see while you're laddering or let's say a tournament match. So before I get into it, I want to say not all team archetypes will be represented. I will say I don't have a common hail team to show you guys because I want to stick to the basics, the things where if you have 10 Pokemon battles, these teams tend to be represented pretty well in those 10 random games against random users. And I'll just be going over their strengths and maybe their weaknesses, and this I just hope it gives you a little more insight. I know especially in the Team of the Week videos I'll mention things like, oh, this team is good against a typical rain offense team, or oh, this team does really well against the common sandstall teams that you might run into, and I want to make sure you guys know all those teams. So here you have, I've prepared a few of them, as you'll see right here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 common teams you may run into while laddering. So first thing we've got here, we've got a common Tyranitar sand team. We've talked about these kind of teams a lot in my videos, and the main thing is, it's built around, or partially around, the Choice Banded Pursuit Tyranitar and a Choice Scarfed Keldeo. The other Pokemon that you will tend to have on these kind of teams, a bulky ground type. A lot of the times that bulky ground type will be Landorus, and since these teams are pretty offensive, a lot of times you'll see the Double Dance Landorus set that kind of sets up, well, hopefully tries to set up both the Sword Stance and a Rock Polish, but more often than not just is a really great pivot switch for a lot of physical Pokemon. Can set up on things like Terrakion, who can be a bit of a problem for typical sand teams. So that's usually added. Latias, a Pokemon which sees a lot of usage in our metagame, thanks to Pokemon like Keldeo and the overwhelming presence of Drizzle as a whole. And Latias is used, again, a very offensive pivot kind of Pokemon. It utilizes all the resistances a typical sand team would want, and can fire off very strong moves while having decent survivability thanks to reliable recovery. The last two slots are kind of up for grabs. The two most common things I will tend to see are Jirachi and Celebi, because they kind of cover your bases. Sometimes you'll see maybe a Heatran over Jirachi, because they both are kind of, they both play the specially defensive steel type role. But you'll often see Celebi on these kind of teams because, again, secondary check, things like Keldeo, it will be probably your #1 Volt Switch Absorber, because you can baton pass right out of Pokemon like Choice Banded Tyranitar, whereas Latias may not be able to. And then Jirachi plays the role of the steel, really, because these teams will definitely all need a steel type. Sometimes you'll see things like Scizor in this slot to be a little more offensive. Jirachi's usage is probably going slowly farther down and down ever since Tornadus T was banned to Ubers, but it's still a pretty solid contender for typical teams like this. You'll sometimes see the mixed attacker Jirachi. That's a very popular choice right now. But that is a very common Tyranitar sand team. Again, I don't want to say this is the most common version or the version you'll run into the most. I just want to give a kind of framework that these teams tend to follow. As I mentioned before, slots like this will be in high contest. A different steel type Heatran or Scizor, a different grass type might be in this place, Breloom maybe, but Celebi tends to be on there pretty much. Sometimes you'll see Garchomp as the team's ground type, although I would say Landorus Therian has much more usage and utility. But there you go, the atypical Tyranitar Sand team. Very strong. You'll see it a lot as you climb higher and higher up on the ladder, because it performs very consistently against many teams. Let's get to the next one. And I believe, yep, it's going to be a typical Rain offense team. Looking at it very quickly, we have Choice Specs Politoed, again, a Choice Scarfed Keldeo, a Landorus Therian, a Ferrothorn, a Choice Banded Scizor, and a Swords Dance Toxicroak. Now let's delve a little deeper in the team. Rain offense teams tend to be about abusing, well, obviously abusing Drizzle and the benefits that it gives, and overpowering. A lot of Rain teams will account for overpowering a rival team's water resistances. So as you can see, they will often have a 1-2 punch with Pokemon like Politoed and Keldeo, the two main abusers of the Rain's water type attack boost, and Politoed acts as a kind of wall breaker. Choice Specs Hydro Pump in the Rain is huge. I mean, it 2-hit KOs a lot of Rotom Ws, unless they're very, very specially defensive. It is the big nuke that the team will often use to try and break teams down. Choice Scarf Keldeo is a monster in the Rain, as many of you know, and especially once all the opponent's water resistances or water immunities have been weakened or taken out, Choice Scarf Keldeo can clean up in the Rain. I think we've all had that happen to us before, where Keldeo just comes in late game and just clicks Surf, 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 Surf. It also provides a perfect revenge killer for these Rain teams, taking out anything from Dragonites to Gyarados and many, many more. This is where a typical Rain offense team will sometimes look a bit balanced, because they often like to have the kind of defensive pivots, even on an offensive team. We'll see here again, you have Landorus Therian. It melds really well with typical Rain teams, and that's why its usage is so high. It's the primary Stealth Rock setter, and can utilize stuff like U-turn to really hurt things like Celebi, which is stopping the two Rain abusers from really smashing an opponent's team. You have Ferrothorn, who sets up spikes or Stealth Rocks, or both in a lot of cases, and Ferrothorn is seen on so many Rain teams, even if they're super offensive, because Kingdra is a big problem for Rain teams, and Ferrothorn is your best bet to stop it. And since you want to play consistently on the ladder, a lot of Rain teams will have Ferrothorn, even if they're offensive. And it brings a lot of utility to Rain teams. You know, it's an excellent check to a lot of Dragon-type Pokemon. It is, as you can see, the main Volt Switch absorber on this team, thanks for its grass typing. And it can be really annoying in the Rain, and it abuses the Rain in that its fire weakness is lowered. The next Pokemon is, again, more offensive, in line with the team, a Choice Banded Scizor. Choice Banded Scizor, again, melds really well with Rain teams. It abuses them outright, because it lowers the fire weakness, obviously. And secondly, it's really useful on Rain teams. It takes care of a lot of Pokemon that Rain teams have trouble with. Again, U-turn on stuff like Celebes. You can even use Pursuit. Choice Banded Pursuit will take out a lot of the Pokemon that wall Keldeo. We saw that in the typical Tyranitar team. Both of these teams utilize Choice Banded Pursuit to take care of Keldeo's counters. And the final Pokemon we have here is a Swords Dance Life Orb Toxicroak. It is a big abuser of Rain, and is, in my opinion, very, very threatening in this metagame. Thanks to Dry Skin, it gets HP per turn when it's in the Rain, which kind of neutralizes that Life Orb recoil. And As you can tell, both of the last two teams have used Lander's Therian. Lander's Therian cannot hope to stop a Toxicroak, because a +1 Life Orb Ice Punch will be one-hit KOing most Landorus. So because of that, and the fact that most teams run Lander's Therian as their main physical wall nowadays, it means Toxicroak has a very easy time opening up a lot of teams to being swept by them. Plus it has priority, very strong with cross chop. It also sets up on a lot of common rain checks. Doesn't fear much from, say, Tentacruel. A Ferrothorn without something like Thunder Wave is pretty good bait to set up. And it's also a perfect Pokemon to set up on Keldeo. It resists Secret Sword, it is immune, thanks to Dry Skin, to Hydro Pumps and Surfs, and the only way Keldeo can hope to 2-hit KO it is with something like Specs HP Ghost, or a very rare HP Psychic. So there you go, typical Rain offense team. Works really well on the ladder. I'll use Rain offense quite a lot on the ladder, as you saw in one of my Team of the Weeks. So the next team we have here, another offense team. This is going to be Common Rain, or excuse me, Common Sun offense. As many of you guys know, Sun is considered to be the least consistent of the top 3 weathers, and that is because it can be pretty team matchup dependent. Sun teams tend to be very offensive and tend to try and abuse the biggest Sun abusers as quickly as possible. Obviously you need Ninetales here to set up the Sun, but it also brings actually a decent amount of utility. It can phase out things like Calm Mind Latias. It can get burns on things like Tyranitar or Politoads to build up the passive damage that is very useful in winning the Weather War. Next we have the biggest abuser of Sun, in my opinion, Venusaur. The typical set you'll see on these is a just Life Orb Growth, special attacker, and it is because this Pokemon is so threatening. If you can manage to win the Weather War, then Growth Life Orb Venusaur with Chlorophyll will do huge amounts of damage. It is a wonderful game ender. Wonderful end game sweeper. Thanks to Giga Drain, can take back the Life Orb recoil, pseudo stab boost with HP Fire in the Sun, and then its strongest attack is Sludge Bomb. Next abuser is Volcarona. Typically you'll see just an all-out offensive version, although it uses leftovers because it gives it a decent amount of survivability when utilized with the special defense boost of Quiver Dance. Again, Volcarona is very threatening in the Sun. It only takes one Quiver Dance to really do a number on a lot of teams, but it can often get multiple ones, and a very common item you'll see on ladder, especially higher up, and it's getting more and more common, I'll just mention it, is Paso Berry, which stops things like Keldeo revenging it, even in the rain, I believe, if you have a Quiver Dance up. So super threatening Pokemon, Volcarona, and it is very easy to use on these rain teams because they usually implore Magic Bounce, and more often than not, that is seen in Xatu. Xatu is a Pokemon that didn't get a lot of usage before too long, until the Smogon user Lavos Spawn kind of brought it to the attention of the community and showed how viable it is on Sun teams. Now, it's mainly used to keep Stealth Rocks and other hazards off your side of the field, because Ninetales is weak to him, and Volcarona is very weak to him, and Dugtrio utilizes a Focus Sash to be able to better trap certain Pokemon. Biggest one, Heatran. As you can see, this team is actually very weak to Heatran itself. It doesn't have too many ways of dealing with it. And that is because Dugtrio is very reliable at trapping Heatran. It is kind of the glue that keeps the team together because it removes so many counters that this team has. And then the final Pokemon is a Pokemon that's been getting a lot more usage lately after the Smogon's World Cup of Pokemon, is Flame Charge Heatran. Flame Charge Heatran is really cool because it can't be trapped by Dugtrio one-on-one, thanks to Air Balloon and the fact that Flame Charge gives Heatran a +1 while breaking Dugtrio's Sash. Plus, this Heatran, excuse me, that should be Solar Beam. This Heatran is a great late game sweeper. Again, once Heatran is removed from an opponent's field and you win the Weather War, Fire, Grass, Ice coverage is awesome, and they are all very strong attacks backed by Heatran's very respectable special attack. And there you go. This is a very common Sun offense team that you have to be wary of and you have to be aware of when you team build. Might try and go a little bit faster for these next one. This is a common Rain Stall team. Again, we're now off of offense for just a minute, and we're going to look at stall teams. These are teams you'll tend to see much higher up on the ladder, because stall teams rely on the idea that your opponent won't bring something really weird that will throw you off. Rain Stall utilizes rain in less obvious manners in most of the time, except in Tentacruel. Tentacruel is probably the single best spinner, reliable spinner that the OU metagame has, because in the rain it gets so much passive recovery plus protect, it can be very hard to wear it down. Plus it can lay the toxic spikes that are very useful for stall teams and absorb toxic spikes. Politoed is really here just to set up the rain, and it has some pretty decent utility with Perish Song and Toxic. Ferrothorn, more often than not, will lay the spikes, as we saw on the Rain offense team, and it serves a pretty similar role. It's also the biggest, it is the only Steel team, Steel type Pokemon, but some teams may run like a Calm Mind Jirachi over this slot, but we'll get to that in a minute. Chansey is the biggest special wall that this team has. It utilizes Thunder Wave, so you can more easily beat Pokemon like Venusaur, who's actually a pretty big threat for a lot of Rain Stall teams. And it has utility in Wish to heal up other members of your team. Specifically, and look who it is again, he pops up on a lot of common teams, as you'll see, Landorus Therian, the biggest physical wall on a typical Rain Stall team. It's utilized in the same manner we've seen before. It takes on Pokemon like Terrakion, but it will not take on Toxicroaks again. And that's where some teams will run Skarmory maybe over Ferrothorn, switch things up. But again, this is just a common template for Rain Stall. And finally, Rain Stall will tend to have some kind of finisher. A typical finisher for a long time was Sub-Calm Mind Jirachi, but something that's been more common recently is Sub-Hone Claws Kyurem Black, because it brings a lot of resistances a Rain Stall team might want. So there you go, it's a very typical Rain Stall team. It can be very annoying to take out, because all these Pokemon have such good recovery and cover so many bases, they cover so many of the most common threats in the metagame, and it is a very strong and consistent team style. It doesn't matter too much on team matchup. It can do pretty well against most things. Here we have a typical Rain Stall. This is a archetype that has been around for a long time. You will see this team on the ladder at some point, especially if someone's trying to get suspect requirements. It's a very common team. Utilizes double sand to better win the Weather War against offensive Sun and offensive Rain teams. Paudon, great physical wall, sets up Stealth Rocks, can take out most physical threats. Fortress, secondary hazard layer. Spikes is the more common choice. Sometimes you'll see Spikes and Toxic Spikes, or just Toxic Spikes by itself. And it brings the Rapid Spin utility that a lot of stall teams really appreciate. It's also the first Dragon type resistance. Next we have Celebi. It is the Volt Switch absorber on the team. It walls many common Pokemon. Big one is Keldeo, obviously, and can sponge a lot of those boosted water type attacks thanks to its great natural special bulk. Next we have Jellicent, which is a Pokemon that's seen a lot on Sandstall teams. Because it is the premier spin blocker, you want to keep all those hazards that you set up on the field, and you utilize Jellicent with that. It is also another wonderful water type immunity, and it can be just super helpful, taking down many common threats. Now, Analytic Starmie started to become very popular, and it could defeat Jellicent by itself, and then once Jellicent's out of the way, hey, now you get the spin-off. But common Sandstall utilizes Choice Scarf Tyranitar, who can come in once Starmie has taken out Jellicent and trap it thanks to Choice Scarf Pursuit. And then you get to keep your hazards. Plus, Choice Scarf Tyranitar takes out a lot of Pokemon. Bullet Punchless Sword Dance Lucarios, outspeeds +1 Dragonites, and is a great revenge killer. Finally, we have Heatran. It is a wonderful Pokemon that Sandstall will usually utilize to better defeat Sun teams. And you might be thinking, oh, but yeah, Sun teams all carry Dugtrio, and you were just saying how reliably it can take out Heatran, and it can. But the thing that is great about these kind of teams is that you still have Tyranitar and Hippowdon, and it is incredibly hard for an offensive Sun team that only utilizes Dugtrio to win the Weather War against a Sandstall team. I mean, it is really hard because Dugtrio will have a very hard time trapping Choice Scarf Tyranitar. It has to make sure its Focus Sash is still enabled, and Dugtrio will not be able to trap Hippowdon. So there you go, it's a very common Sandstall team. And we're getting down to the final couple. This is a very common team that has been sprouting up a lot. It was seen a lot in the Smogon Frontier very recently. It is a weatherless offense team. It utilizes Custap Skarmory that we all know since my last team of the week, that uses Custap Berry to get Stealth Rocks and more often than not Spikes on your opponent's side of the field. It utilizes a fairly odd choice in spin blocker for an offensive team. In Jellicent, a lot of times offensive teams will use Gengar as a spin blocker, but this team utilizes Jellicent because it was especially weak to Keldeo. Plus, thanks to Taunt, Will-O-Wisp, Jellicent is a very good answer against Stall, because it can taunt and Will-O-Wisp and keep whirling down a Stall team. It has Choice Scarf Keldeo because it's just a wonderful revenge killer, and Focus Sash Alakazam because it is a very underrated threat more often than not in the metagame, although awareness is beginning to rise on Alakazam as a kind of secondary revenge killer and a great all-around offensive Pokemon on this team. It utilizes a cool set of Scizor of Flying Gem Acrobatics to lure out many common counters for Keldeo. Instead of utilizing the regular Choice Banded Pursuit, with Flying Gem, Swords Dance, and Acrobatics, Scizor can one-hit KO Jellicents that try and come in to wall you. This leaves the door open, wide open, for Keldeo. Finally, it has a Choice Banded Dragonite as a great wall breaker, and again can work as a very positive revenge killer thanks to Choice Banded Extreme Speed. This team utilizes early entry hazards plus very fast and powerful Pokemon to overwhelm a opponent. The penultimate team on this list is going to be another common one. It's going to be the typical Dragmag offense. For those of you who don't know, Dragmag stands for Dragon Magnezone team, and they are a commonality because it's very easy to overwhelm an opponent with just dragons and Magnezone taking out steals. Typically they use Focus Sash Mamoswine as their Stealth Rock setter because it has a lot of utility for these teams because it can revenge opposing dragons. They will usually have some kind of Dragon Dancer as a sweeper, and Dragonite is a very, very common choice thanks to multi-scale. It can get up multiple Dragon Dances sometimes. Choice Scarf Jirachi is often seen on these teams because it gives you a solid Revenge Killer and Dragon type resistance. Teams that stack Dragon types are often weak to opposing Dragon type teams. So a Jirachi is very useful. Plus the power of Trick cannot be underestimated for these teams, because if you trick the right Pokemon, it can really hinder it for the rest of the game. Latias is the second Dragon type that's usually seen on these teams. It utilizes its massive special attack, its wonderful base speed, to really pound the opposition, especially when Steel types have been trapped and eliminated with Choice Specs Magnezone, which uses its ability Magnet Pull to trap the Steel types and allow it to take them right out. Finally, these teams will usually use just a very hard-hitting Choice Banded Dragon. Sometimes you'll see Choice Banded Dragonite on these teams, but usually they will have something that can come in, click Outrage, and destroy once Steels have been removed with Magnezone. So there you go, that's the common the common Dragmag team. And finally, just a very quick thing, this is the very common Sand Balance team you will run into if you begin to ladder pretty high. It is a team created by the Smogon user Meru, and it is now used by just so many people who are in maybe the top 10. So many top 10 alts on Pokemon Showdown use this team to get up there because it's just very, very strong. It uses Hippowdon to set up rocks, and it's just a great wall. Skarmory, another awesome wall, sets up spikes. Jellicent spin blocks. Roserade sets up toxic spikes, usually early game, and can use Sleep Powder. And then it has two pretty great finishers in Calm Mind, Hidden Power Latias, which lures out a lot of Steel type Pokemon and can do a number on very defensive teams. And the Steels it lures out are swiftly taken care of by Choice Banded Stoutland. Choice Banded Stoutland is just an awesome team member on this team, because all the passive damage that all these entry hazards rack up allow Stoutland to just come in at the end game and just click a button. Thanks to Sand Rush and the sand that will more than likely be up, because this team tends to win Weather Wars. It has awesome power and it is awesome speed, and this is a team you will see if you ladder high up on the ladder. So there you go. These are very common team styles that you'll see while laddering. I hope this helps you guys. Remember, I don't want to say that these are the most common teams you will see, although this probably is, this team right here. But I just wanted to show you guys how these teams are put together more often than not. And hopefully it will really help you when you are team building, because now you have teams you can look at and say, I need to prepare for Rainstorm, I need to prepare for Sun Offense. And you can watch this video and see a common version of those said archetypes. So with all that said, I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you like my content. And I'll see you guys next time.